So there has been quite a bit of news regarding the freestyle stuff. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds in terms of everything, so I'm going to start with one tweet, and I'm mostly going to talk about general stuff as well as answer your questions. So let's start first of all with a very specific tweet. Let me change the scene, and here we go. Or wait, wrong scene. There we go. Right scene. All right, so first things first. 47 so bad. I actually started the puzzle rush 30 seconds late because I was trying to do the setup, but it doesn't matter. So we're gonna start with this. Let me stop the music. And here we go. Very, very important to note. Okay, so let's get going. Okay, so all right. So this is from the International Chess Federation, and it says today, February 4th, the organizers of the Freestyle Chess Tour fully deleted from its regulations the reference to the World Championship title following a change in the regulation. Players wishing to participate in the 2025 Freestyle Chess Tour are no longer required to sign the waiver note. Now, there are a lot of things to talk about, and I'm mostly going to just talk specifically about, you know, the timeline of everything that has happened. There's some things that I straight up do know and other things that I don't know. So let's start with the first thing. A lot of the stuff relating freestyle began prior to the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Championship, which was held in New York at the end of December. There were already a lot of discussions regarding all this sort of stuff, and it is true that the president of FIDE did basically promise Magnus that no players would face threats or challenges if they chose to play in the tour, and that is what led to Magnus Carlsen playing in the World Rapid and Blitz Championship. So that's the first point that I'm going to be very, very clear on. Because that is not in doubt at all. Okay, now following that, of course, if you fast forward to about 2 weeks ago, FIDE did come outright and make a bunch of threats towards the players, and I'm going to cover this again. I mean, I did cover this in a video before, but I will talk about this very clearly. First thing is FIDE sent an email basically saying the players had to sign a waiver. Now, I have seen a lot of stuff on social media saying, what is this waiver? It's no big deal. Like, it's just basically saying one thing. Now, I'm going to read it out again to be very clear for people who did not hear about it before, which is that the waiver was the player is informed and acknowledged that every player participating in the events of the FIDE World Championship cycle made a written commitment not to compete or otherwise participate in any cycle, tournament, or match establishing a World Chess Champion or named as World Chess Championship or anything similar tournament or event unless such tournament or event is organized by FIDE under the aegis of FIDE within 4 years from the date of completion of the relevant event. Now, I don't want to be legal here, but I'm going to talk about a couple things. Now, this is very important. There are a couple of parts of this waiver to talk about. And I know that I spoke about this before a little bit, but when it says World Chess Championship, this is very important because what FIDE is doing here is, even if they're not going to say this publicly, they're basically admitting that they do not have the copyright of the World Chess Championship. It is worth pointing out that FIDE actually lost a legal case in 2021 trying to copyright World Chess Championship. They have the right to the FIDE World Chess Championship. They do not have the rights to World Championship. So in this document that FIDE sent, they were basically trying to lock the players in so that nobody could do anything. And this was very clearly an admission on their part that they do not have the rights for the World Chess Championship itself. Now, putting that aside, we'll keep going with what was in this waiver. The second point was the player is informed and acknowledges that FIDE agrees as a gesture of goodwill to waive the player above mentioned obligations in relation to the Freestyle Chess Tour 2025. This waiver is of a one-time nature and does not affect all their FIDE rights and any other tournament in which the player may violate the above mentioned obligation of the player. This does not mean that FIDE recognizes any rights for the Freestyle Chess Tour 2025, and FIDE reserves the right to take any legal action in this regard aimed at organizers of the series. Now, this is also very important because what FIDE does here with the second point in this waiver is they basically say, okay, we're doing something as a gesture of goodwill, when in reality, that's not what they're doing at all. They're basically saying players can play in this in 2025, but you will not be able to play in it going forward, meaning that, of course, they're trying to kill the competition as they see it. Now, I don't really see freestyle as competition, but I'll talk about that afterwards. But that second point. Now, as far as why did they concede, I'm going to talk about that as well afterwards. I have some thoughts on that. But basically the bottom line is that, you know, with this, it's like a gesture of goodwill is not actually goodwill. It's basically an attempt to basically force the players to say you can play now, but you won't be able to play in the future. Point number 3. The player is informed and acknowledged that any violations of the above obligation, point 1, will result in the following sanctions from FIDE. The player will automatically be banned from participation in the classical FIDE World Chess Championship cycle for the period of 4 years, effective from the date when the player started playing the relevant tournament, in violation of his obligations hereunder or signed the relevant agreement with another organizer. Number 4, the player is informed and acknowledged that FIDE retains the right to unilaterally extend the specified disqualification ban to world championships in rapid and or blitz formats, as well as to apply the ban to relevant rating calculations of the player violating the obligations. Now again, okay, point 4, not a big deal. Point 3 is the big threat there in terms of the waiver. So when, I have seen a lot of people understand, well, why don't the players just sign the waiver? What's the big deal? This is what was in the waiver. And if you sign this waiver, you're basically signing away your rights as a player to have freedom of choice to play in tournaments that you want to play in. Okay, so that's the waiver. I wanted to get that out of the way for anybody who's wondering. Now I'll close that. That is a very important point, but now let's move forward. So now that was sent around January, I don't know, 24th or something like that, and the players were given a February 3rd deadline. Now yesterday, of course, was February 3rd. The deadline came and passed. There was no agreement between freestyle or FIDE, and the players were not banned. Now this is also a very important point, because what that says, I've seen other people speculating like, surely the players are going to side with FIDE or things along those lines. The reality is quite a few of the top players did not sign that waiver, and that's why FIDE, in their infinite wisdom, they decided to extend their deadline from February 3rd to February 4th. They extend their deadline by 1 day. And so ultimately what I think happened between FIDE showing more bad faith by extending its deadline by 1 day instead of a week or 2 weeks to let the players discuss and come up with a proposal or another solution, was basically they made it 1 day. Now this morning, of course, we have the tweet here, which I already read out to you guys from FIDE. This was from, I don't know how long ago this was. This was 9:30 a.m. So this was actually only 1 hour ago that this came out. Did I sign? I did not sign. And there are many others who did not sign as well amongst the top players, which I have seen people saying, well, surely a lot of top players signed. The thing is, top players did not sign, which is exactly why this issue kept dragging. But at the end of the day, you're now probably wondering, well, what happens? What happened? Magus put out a tweet yesterday where he attacked the FIDE president and all this other stuff. And like, what happened to change in 1 day? Now, my general view of this is what happened is that I think freestyle chess realized that even though they're in the right legally, FIDE is simply going to drag this issue out forever, and it is going to harm the players. Meaning that the players who are playing in freestyle, they have to worry about the future, and trying to play tournaments and having to worry about the future is a big issue. People do not want to have these sorts of things on their head. Now, I would also say that I think the timing of when this went out was really bad. And, I did pass Fabiano to become number 2 in the world rankings, but the day when Fabiano lost to, I think it was Fedose, it was like 1 day after there were a lot of big discussions and everything else. And I firmly believe that having to deal with this nonsense that day and throughout the tournament had a big effect on Fabiano in terms of his poor result in the in Tata Steel. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to make excuses for Fabiano's poor result or whatever, but I think that it had an effect on him. And I think for the players, it's very difficult when you're trying to play your best chess to have things like this hanging over your head. And again, what I say now is just speculation on my part. I have no idea why freestyle chose to do this. But I believe that freestyle basically felt that for the players is simply going to be something that's going to drag on forever, and the players are going to really be uncomfortable. No one's going to be in a good mood, and it's just going to be very difficult to play chess. Freestyle realized that FIDE has the rights. That is incorrect. FIDE does not have the rights. I spoke about this a second ago, but I'll reiterate it in case you just popped in here to the live stream, which is FIDE does not have the rights. What FIDE has the rights to very clearly is they have the rights to FIDE World Chess Championship. They do not have the rights to World Chess Championship. So they cannot claim they have the rights to World Championship or World Champion, those sorts of things. They have the right to FIDE World Chess Championship, FIDE World Champion. But at the end of the day, if you think about it for the players, if this ends up going down a legal route potentially, or the players are in limbo, that's not going to be good for the chess. That's not going to be good for chess as a whole. So I think it's a very bad situation all around. I think that both sides, made mistakes. I think freestyle should not have leaked some of the personal conversations. I think also what Emil did was completely unacceptable for someone who's supposed to be the head of an organization. But regardless, the situation appears to be resolved. So now you're probably wondering, how do I feel about it? And I also saw someone saying that freestyle started this. That's not actually what happened. What happened is freestyle wanted to call their event a world championship. They're within their rights, as I said, legally to do that. And FIDE then tried to extort them for money. And besides extorting them for money through blackmail, FIDE then started going after the players and trying to threaten them with bans and sanctions and everything else. Now, it is my firm belief, as I said before, that none of this would hold up in court. That is actually why I did not sign the document at all. I do not believe that this would have held up in court in any regard, whether it's world champion, world chess champion, world chess championship, that would not have held up. I don't believe that the sanctions or ban against players would have held up. If that had happened, I would have actually fought that too, through legal means. So moving on then to the next bit about stuff that people are talking about. You know, I don't think either side would necessarily looks very good in this. I think that's very clear. But what I would say is that ultimately you have to look at it from a certain perspective. Now, if you look at the perspective from the players, if you look at it from the perspective of just purely chess players, I think ultimately this is a win for the chess players. The players get to play extortion and blackmail. I mean, basically FIDE said we're okay with you calling it the World Chess Championship if you give us $500,000. That has been publicly stated in multiple places. So this is not, I don't know how you can say that when you say the 500K we're okay with it when you don't actually have the rights to that and they would have lost legally. I don't know how you can say that isn't blackmail. Secondarily, threatening players with bans. They're trying to use all means possible to stop the event from happening. So I don't really know how you can have an issue with that, but that's beside the point right now. So where would the 500K go anyways? The pockets of the heads? I mean, who knows? We can speculate on that and whatever, but who knows? But anyway, so for the players, if you're purely a player, you just want to play in as many terms as possible. Now, so from that standpoint, it's definitely a win. The players can play in the FIDE events, it looks like they can play in the freestyle events, and that's a win for their bottom line, no doubt, which is objectively a good thing if you're purely a player. Now, if you're on the other side and you're looking at trying to like make chess grow bigger, or you think that chess should be bigger than it currently is, my attitude towards that is that this is a very big failure, because what it means is it's a sign that people who are going to try and start something new, be creative, be disruptors in the world of chess, are going to have to deal with FIDE basically doing all this nonsense. And I do consider it nonsense, to be clear. So from that standpoint, it's actually very bad, because what it means is that objectively, if someone really wealthy wants to get interested in chess or wants to sponsor or do something, they're always gonna have to deal with this nonsense from FIDE, and that means that the chance of chess going really big or potentially mainstream, it's going to be very difficult. Can I fix my microphone? I think my mic is good. No, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I think my microphone is good, but you guys tell me. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure my microphone is good. That's probably on your end. So yeah, again, typical. Yeah, that's a good one. It's good. Yeah, so it's on your end, dude. It's on your end. Congrats for disturbing me. So as I was saying, yeah, I always see that, and anytime I see it, I fall for that bait. But as I was saying, so ultimately for the players, I think it's a win. From the standpoint of chess as a whole, I think it's a very big loss, because all it's going to do is make it more difficult for people to come in and want to do anything with chess. And in the long run, if there aren't people who are going to do stuff related to growing the game, I don't think that chess is ever going to become much bigger than it currently is. So that's how I view it. I think, you know, from my standpoint, I think it's a big loss. I think that as someone who wants to see chess become much bigger, become more mainstream, I think that having to deal with an organization that is going to, you know, basically cause all these problems over words which they don't have the rights to, it only means that chess is going to be stuck where it is. Now, make no mistake, chess is in a very good place right now, but I think that chess is in a very good place more so due to stuff that many people on social media have done or on online platforms than anything FIDE has done. I think that very clearly. You look at the Indian market, what Sagar Shah has done is immense. It's immense. It cannot be understated what he has done to help promote chess in India. You obviously have people like Levy and myself, you have chess.com, and I think all these things combined, they're all things that happen outside of FIDE. FIDE has no involvement with them, and FIDE wants to try and take credit. You know, one of the things that's helped FIDE get some of these sponsors is the popularity, the rise of chess, and that is directly due to the contributions of all these other people and nothing that FIDE has done themselves, frankly. So I think it's very disappointing from the standpoint of from the future of trying to make chess become bigger than it is. I think this is really a step in a direction where we've sort of peaked in a way. I don't think chess can become much bigger, because it's clear you're not going to have people wanting to get involved when they see what has happened between FIDE and freestyle here. So I think it's I think for the players, if you're purely a player and you don't have bigger aspirations or you don't have a bigger picture, I think it's going to be great. That's my attitude. I think it's going to be great for the players. It's a big win overall. If you do think that chess can become bigger, or you have dreams, or you want to try and do something, it's very much of a loss, I would say, for chess as a whole. Why did freestyle fold? I think ultimately the reason they did is I think they knew they would have won legally, but I think that the players just having to deal with all the stress and the pressure and everything hanging over their head, finally they thought it was just too much. That's my view. I have not seen a take video. I don't really want to watch that right now, because I don't want to see more nonsense and more kind of like more distortions of the story. I mean, the bottom line is I'll lay out the timeline one more time before I move on, which is there were discussions, I think maybe it's November or December, about freestyle. FIDE asked for $500,000 for it to be called actually I'm holding coffee in my hand so I can't to call it a world championship. That reached a boiling point, I think, right before the World Blitz and Rapid Championship in New York City, where Magnus was threatening not to play, and Dvorkovich, the FIDE president, clearly stated that the players would not face retaliation or threats and they would be able to play the freestyle. And that was the promise made by Dvorkovich, and then Dvorkovich went back on that. After the World Rapid and Blitz happened, we fast forward to middle of January. FIDE then starts threatening the players because they realize that freestyle intends to call the world championship, and they're trying to use any means necessary to stop that. So that's basically the timeline of like what happened with all of it. And I don't know when the 100K or whatever that freestyle offered was exactly. I know there was some offer, but that's what happened. And then the players are having a lot of discussions. February 3rd comes around. Not enough of the top players have signed this waiver, which takes away all their rights. And then the deadline gets extended to February 4th. And I think that at that point, it's like, okay, what's happening? FIDE is simply they're probably just going to keep holding this threat over the players' heads forever and hope that the players eventually cave. Is my view. And I think freestyle just say, like, this is so stupid. We're dealing with people who are irrational, and that's like, we want to hold our event, and like, whatever, we just want to hold our event. So I don't necessarily love that they caved, but I think they did it because they thought for the players, ultimately it was better. They thought for the players to play would be a good thing, versus like having stuff hanging over their head. Again, the tournament in Germany starts in a couple of days too, so that's my view. Again, I'm not on the inside. I can't stress this enough because there are a lot of people out there who are like conspiracy theorists these days on many different topics, but I can't stress enough that I have no involvement with this. Like, I could play this event, I could do badly, finish in 8th place, and not play another event this whole season. I have no equity or stake in this. I have no direct involvement. So like, I've seen people think that like somehow like I'm saying this because like I have something. I don't. If I play this first event, I do badly, I might not qualify for any of the other events. So I'm not doing this because like I'm getting anything. It's very possible this could be a big downside for me. It could be a big negative. So that's my general takeaways. I think, from the player standpoint, it's a big win. If you want to try and do something bigger with chess, it's a very, very big loss, and I think it only sets chess backwards in that regard. On the other hand, you could play devil's advocate and say that at the end of the day, chess can't become bigger than it is. Maybe chess is as big as it is, and those of us who dream or have ideas, we're just completely insane. That's entirely reasonable too. I don't believe that freestyle is paying FIDE any money. No, I don't believe there's any financial agreement, but again, I don't know specifically what's going on. So that's how it goes. I mean, I think it's very simple. Either you're a player, pure player, and you're happy. If you're in a situation like I'm in, I'm not particularly happy because I think in the long term, it's going to scare away potential sponsors, like really big sponsors who might want to try and innovate and disrupt, which I think could only be a good thing. But that's how it goes. I think also, I think also what else was someone saying? Someone's saying something, I don't know what, but I was looking at Twitter. I think the thing that's very difficult, the other thing that I would say that's very difficult with FIDE is like, I will say this, like, if you're involved with FIDE and you're not a player who's trying to make a living, FIDE is actually overall very good in my opinion. I think if you're like an arbiter, trying to be an arbiter of some tournaments, you're with a federation, I think FIDE does a lot of things outside of at the top level that are very good. But the problem is at the top level, if you're trying to make a living, FIDE tries to control everything, and I think that that ultimately is very, very bad. So if you're in any way associated with FIDE outside of being like a player trying to make a living, FIDE is actually very good and very beneficial in many ways. So that's what also makes it very difficult, because not everything with FIDE is terrible. So that's the bottom line with what I have to talk about on this topic. You know, I think, you know, it depends where your situation is. I think for the players, ultimately, it's going to be a win. For Magnus, I think it's a huge loss, actually. I think for Magnus, though, this is a big loss. I think that there's no doubt about that. But, you know, we'll just see. We'll see what happens. And you know, hopefully this is the end of it. I mean, I don't know if it is, but I hope it is. So who knows? Who knows? I don't really want to discuss tweets, because I also just like one last thing. I saw a lot of tweets, and like, frankly, all that stuff is just like, it turned me off. Like, I saw so much nonsense. Like, I mean, I saw like leaking DMs, and people are insulting, like Emil's insulting me in some tweets, and he's insulting Magnus, not making fun of world champions, and he is. Magnus is making fun of, is like insulting Dvorak. Like, I mean, all that stuff, frankly, just makes me really sick. Like, all of it. Like, I saw all of it, and I was just like, what even is going on here? What even is going on? So the whole thing was just like really off-putting for me, really off-putting. So anyway, that's my little bit. So just giving you guys a touch of an update, and yeah, we'll move on and we'll play Title Tuesday.